Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSat Network. Friend, as you know, this week we are going to have a discussion on legal framework, and in fact, precisely we'll talk about the criminal justice in India. And we'll start today with the crime and criminal justice system in India. What is the meaning of crime and how it has been given in a setup of judicial system in India. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in studio Dr. Meenakshi Sinha. She is senior faculty in Jayaprakash Narayan Jayaprakash National Institute of Criminology and Forensic Science and of Government of India, and she has done a LLM from India and also from UK, and she is also a Commonwealth scholar and senior faculty. So I hope her knowledge will help us to understand this basic knowledge about the criminal justice in India in a new perspective. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Sinha for the EduSat lecture on this very topic. Welcome, ma'am.
Nature, good afternoon to all of you who are hearing me on this channel. And with this, before I start with the nature and definition of crime, I would like to tell you in brief what criminal justice system is. Criminal justice system is the agency of social control which prevents and controls the crime. And the moment a crime is committed, the role of criminal justice system is invoked. So the criminal justice system is important because it has to do something with the crime. So before we talk about the role of criminal justice system, its organogram and the functioning, I thought let us have a discussion about the nature and definition of crime. Crime means an act which is both forbidden by law and revolting to the moral sentiments of the society. This definition was given by Stephen in a book called General View of Criminal Law of England. Just I would like to explain it that you see this is forbidden by law and revolting to the moral sentiment. Moral sentiments are usually, all of you know that what are the sentiments. For example, robbery, murder would be crime, but a disobedience of revenue laws or the laws of contract would not constitute a crime. So, the moral sentiments of a society is a flexible term. Therefore, this is not a complete definition because they may change, and they do change from time to time with the growth of public opinion and the social necessities of time. So also the moral values in one country may be contrary to the moral values of another country. For example, adultery, sati prohibition, smoking at public place, putting a belt on a front seat of the car, wildlife crime, etc. may be a crime for some time in India and may not be a crime in another country. I would like to tell then this definition was not okay, therefore I have tried to discuss with Sir William Blackstone's definition on commentaries on the laws of England, which says that crime is an act committed or omitted in violation of public law forbidding or commanding it. This is a better definition because we feel that crime is an act, that everybody knows that it is an act committed or omitted. Something you commit that may be a crime. You try to hide something that may be a crime. Suppose if you know that a person is an organized criminal and you try to hide the information, you don't tell to the police, then that is also considered as a crime under Maharashtra Control of Organized Crime Act. That is an omission. If you commit a murder, then it is a crime. So then that is a commission in violation of public law forbidding or commanding it. You see, further I would like to define the Austin's definition because law forbidding or commanding it means law is the command of sovereign was told by Austin, a great jurist. A wrong which is pursued by sovereign or his subordinate is a crime. That has been taken from the Austin's jurisprudential lecture, that is 27th lecture. That has to be pursued by the sovereign. That means that the punishment is granted by a government, a governmental agencies. Like in India, we have judicial officers who are granting the punishment. So that's how this is under the comment of the command, and violation of which is a crime. Then Kenny modifies Austin's definition and defines crime to be wrong whose sanction is punitive and is in no way remissible by any private person, but is remissible by the crown alone, if remissible at all. Kenny has modified Austin's definition, and he said that crime is a sanction, that you know that there is some binding, if you violate it you will be going to be punished, and is in no way remissible by any private person. Here comes the question about the compoundability of the offence, that criminal act is not compoundable. But in India we have got the compoundable and the non-compoundable, both the offences. Therefore, this is also not a full-fledged definition, but is remissible by the crown, as the President of India has got the power to, give the pardon in a death sentence. So that is remissible at all, only crown. There are three attributes to crime. It is a harm brought by about some antisocial act of human being which the sovereign power desires to prevent. The preventive measures taken by the state appear in the form of a threat of a sanction or punishment. The legal proceedings wherein the guilt or otherwise of the accused is determined are a special kind of proceedings governed by special rules of evidence. By going the attributes of the crime, various definitions of the crime, we can summarize in a common language that crime is a social phenomena, violation of which is causing harm to the society and is made punishable by the court of law. I hope many of you would be agreeing with me that it is a social phenomena, and violation of which is causing harm to the society, because usually crime is against the society, though there is a victim, but society suffers a lot of harm while a crime is being committed. That's why you might have seen that in a criminal cases, well, the case is state versus so and so, R versus state. That means that state is representing the society, and society has suffered and is made punishable by the court of law, who is usually in India is the criminal court, and in other countries also. Section 40 of the Indian Penal Code defines the word offence, which denotes anything made punishable by the court and violation of the law defined under IPC. So this is all in brief about the crime. Now I would like to focus on criminal liability. You see, well, the crime is being committed, there comes a question that what is the relationship between criminal justice system and a crime? You see, the relationship is that once a crime is being committed, then the person has to be held criminally liable, and for holding anybody criminally liable, we need certain ingredients to make anybody the accused or to punish him or to convict him, and that is how the criminal liability arises. And criminal liability arises in certain conditions that I will explain here. Thereafter I will go to the criminal justice system. Criminal liability arises when nobody should be held liable unless he had the evil intent. So first of all, the evil intent means the mental situation of a person. If a person is not thinking of committing a crime, by mistake or by negligence something is happened, then that is not constituted as a crime, except in certain cases where criminal negligence is one of the issue. It is a cardinal doctrine of a criminal law, and that doctrine is being defined in following words, that is actus non facit ream nisi mens sit rea. No act is crime without guilty intention. There are two necessary elements in a crime, that is physical and mental. Actus reus and mens rea means guilty conduct and the guilty mind. And guilty conduct is punishable only when there is a fusion with guilty mind. Thus, the four elements that constitute a criminal liability are a human being under a legal obligation to act in a socially acceptable manner. That means there should be a human being who will be committing a crime, an evil intent and mens rea on the part of such human being. Actus reus, an act committed or omitted in furtherance of such intention. That means that while you plan to commit a crime, you should act in furtherance of the of that guilty mind. Suppose, for example, I want to commit a crime, so there should be something in my mind that I have to go and kill a particular person. What is the reason? If I kill a particular person, I can get his property under my name. So for that, I plan, I go, I buy some revolver, something from a shop, and I go and I kill that person. Then that is the furtherance of my intention, because I intend to kill and I have shot the person. So that's how the crime is being committed. And then in furtherance of that intent, an injury to another human being or to society at large by such an act should have been committed. The first element of criminal liability requires that the act should have been done by a human being before it constitutes a crime punishable by law. Under IPC, mens rea is proved by the words intentionally, voluntarily, knowingly, dishonestly or fraudulently, etc. Indian Penal Code does not define the basic principle, that is actus reus or mens rea. But if you read the IPC, you will find out there are many, definitions of the crime which says whosoever knowingly do this, fraudulently do this. All that explain the mental condition of a mind, that if I know that a person is a criminal and I go and borrow a car and he told me that he has stolen the car and that's why he is giving me in half or 1/4 of the price to the actual. So then that means that I knowingly am buying the car and I am going to become the party of the crime. Every offence under the code virtually imports the idea of criminal intent or mens rea in some form or the another. So this was all in brief about the crime and the criminal liability that I wanted to familiarize you, because it was just a prologue or a beginning of the main topic. There are, as I have told you, that criminal justice system is the agency of social control which prevents and controls the crime. So I've defined the crime. The prevention and control are two issues. Prevention is a social issue where the society is playing a lot of role and they try to take lot of action to prevent the crime, like preventive detention. That is, you detain somebody because you are apprehensive that a particular person may commit a crime. Impounding the passport of a person whom you feel would be absconding and flying away from the country, then it would become very difficult to get the person extradited. So that's how the role of prevention is there. Then comes the role of control, and control, as you all know, they investigate the case, then the charge sheet is submitted and the person is convicted or acquitted if the guilt is proved beyond reasonable doubt. So that's how the role of prevention and control is there. The crime is already discussed. Now I would focus on the 4 branches of criminal justice system that, as I have told you, it is an agency of social control. So, well, agency constitutes certain branches And the main four pillars of the criminal justice system are police, prosecuting agencies, judiciary, prison and correctional administrators. To start with police organization in India, I would like to say that the role of police is to enforce law and order and conduct the investigation. And first of all, I would like to focus on the role of police at the ground level and the state police. The state police is governed under the Police Act 1861, except the states who have enacted their own legislation, as Delhi has enacted the Delhi Police Act and in many other states. But wherever there is no law enacted, the 1861 Police Act is governing. The organization of police is like that, that is a hierarchical structure. The police is in a state, it is headed by an officer equivalent to the rank of Director General of Police, who is overall accountable of all the police activities. He is assisted by Additional Director General of Police, and lot of powers are being delegated to additional DG, maybe one or two heads by the Director General of Police, like additional DG training, additional DG traffic, additional DG law and order, additional DG border security force, like whatever may be the branches. There are so many branches. Then comes the Inspector General of Police. He is in range / zone. Few states it is range, few states they call it zone, that is comprising of certain number of districts as decided by the state governments, because that is a state subject. So I would not like to go into detail because I have a limited time. So each state has got its own criteria. Then DIG, Deputy Inspector General of Police, to assist the Inspector General of Police, and the number varies in different states. Then Superintendent of Police, who is in charge of police functioning at district level. And the Superintendent of Police is assisted by Deputy Superintendent, who is in charge of a circle, and a district is divided into many circles, and in each circle they have a Deputy Superintendent of Police, or they may be called a SDPO or CO, whatever may be. Then there comes the role at the grassroots level, that is SHO, who is the station house in charge, that is in charge of a police station. Each circle is divided into number of police stations, and SHO is a head of a police station. Then the police station is divided into chowkis and police post, where some sub-inspector level officers are being posted, and the number of a police chowki is depending on the discretion of the state. Then SHO is assisted by sub-inspector, head constables, etc. You see, as soon as a crime is committed, the role of SHO and SI becomes very important, because he is the actual person who investigates the crime at the grassroots level. Then there you might have heard the name of police commissioner. So there are police commissioner appointed in metropolitan towns and in big towns. Earlier it was in metropolitan towns only, now in big towns also they are being appointed and given certain powers of magistrate. The difference between the commissionerate and the SP, DSP is that police commissioner, in addition to the accountability of all the police functioning, he has been given certain magistrate's power, which in general situation where deputy superintendent or superintendent of police is there, is vests in district magistrate, ADM or SDM. Under section 144 of CRPC, power to issue order in urgent cases of nuisance or apprehended danger. Then section 107 of securing for security for keeping the peace, armed licensing, etc. And this power also varies from state to state. Like in Delhi, we have a police commissioner who is assisted by joint commissioner of police under various heads, and then additional commissioner of police, deputy commissioner of police who is equivalent to superintendent of police, and assistant commissioner of police who is equivalent to the deputy SP of the police. Besides the state police, there are paramilitary forces, and we sometimes call them CPOs, that is Central Police Organizations. In paramilitary forces, we have CRPF, that is Central Reserve Police Force, and they usually send for maintaining law and order on the demand. ITBP, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, that is mainly deployed at Tibet border. Then, and there are some other battalion of ITBP also who are used as and when required in emergency by the state or the central government. Then we have BSF, that is Border Security Force, deployed at the border, and their main job is to protect and secure the border of the country. Then CISF, which is Central Industrial Security Forces, they are generally deployed on demand to various industries like you see ONGC, like Indian oil companies, like many other companies. Then NSG, which is a National Security Guard, that is dealing with emergency situation when there is a danger to national security. Like the NSG squads were sent to Bombay when 26/11 terrorism has taken place. They are especially trained people to deal in emergency, like bomb disposal squad and all those things. Then we have SPG, that is a Special Protection Group for Prime Minister and VVIP security. Then Armed Police Battalion, that is in state, and then Assistant District Police to maintain, this armed police is assisting district police to maintain law and order as and when required. This is what about in brief about the police organization. Now I would like to tell you that Central Bureau of Investigation is one of the central organization which was established under the Delhi Police Special Police Establishment Act in the year 1946 under the name of a special police establishment in Delhi to look into the cases of corruption and the central government employees. Later on, it was renamed in the year 1963 by the government order as Central Bureau of Investigation, and the Central Bureau of Investigation is investigating the cases relating to corruption, the government servant, and important cases where high officials are involved, and they can, you see, conduct the investigation suo motu, or a case may be transferred to them under the court order. Like in Jakia's case, the case was transferred to the CBI when she has filed a second FIR in Godra riot cases, the wife of a minister whose husband was killed in the riot, and well, after submitting the charge sheet under section 173 of the CRPC, her problem could not be heard. The police refused to take the cognizance. Then she filed second FIR, and later on you see case was being transferred to a special investigating team. So besides CBI, there is a special investigating team that is coming up today, I mean in these days, so I would not like to discuss much. I will discuss maybe some of those issues tomorrow, because I am going to discuss with you about the procedure of investigation. Now I will talk about the role of police. The role of police is maintenance of law and order, investigation of crime, arrest, issuing license, traffic management, welfare measures. Like in Delhi these days, if a senior citizen is being harassed, the police job is to protect. Even they have any problem, they can call up police. Then internal security, border security, industrial security, and other many issues. Like investigation is a very important issue. Now I will come to the prosecuting agencies in the state. The prosecution organization in the state, section 25A of Criminal Procedure Code talk about the prosecution organization in the state, and a director of prosecution has to be there in every state who is heading the prosecution department, and the director of prosecution is assisted by deputy director prosecution, by deputy director prosecution, that may be one or more. Then a public prosecutor at High Court under section 24 of CRPC, then one or more additional public prosecutors at High Court, then a special public prosecutors, a public prosecutor in each district, one or more additional public prosecutors, and assistant public prosecutor under section 25 of Criminal Procedure Code in India. Now I would discuss about the mode of appointment, but before I discuss about the mode of appointment of the public prosecutors, I would like to tell you that the role of prosecutor starts as soon as the charge sheet is submitted and the trial starts. So the moment they take the cognizance, the copy is given to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor, when the trial starts, opens the case and help in prosecuting and other roles. So the mode of appointment. The state government may establish Directorate of Prosecution. An appointment of Director or Deputy Director Prosecution shall be made with the concurrence of Chief Justice of Delhi High Court. Then the Public Prosecutor and Additional Public Prosecutor. The Public Prosecutor at High Court appointed by the state government in consultation with the concerned High Court of State. Central government may appoint one or more public prosecutors for the purpose of conducting any case or class of cases in any district or local area. For every district, the state government appoints public prosecutor and may also appoint one or more additional public prosecutors for the district. This is about the appointment of the public prosecutors and the prosecutors. The central government is also empowered to appoint one or more assistant public prosecutors for the purpose of conducting any case or class of cases in the court of magistrates. State government can appoint one or more assistant public prosecutors for conducting prosecutor in the courts of magistrate. The district magistrate, in consultation with the sessions judge, prepare a panel or names of persons who are in his opinion fit to be appointed as public prosecutors or additional public prosecutor for the district. The appointment of public prosecutor or additional public prosecutor for the district is done from the panel of names prepared by district magistrate. Now I will discuss with you about the eligibility for the appointment of a public prosecutor. The advocates having minimum 10 years of practicing experience as a lawyer are eligible to be appointed as Director of Prosecution or Deputy Director of Prosecution in the state. Advocates having 7 years of practice are eligible to be appointed as public prosecutor or additional public prosecutor or at high court or in district court. Then 10 years minimum practice is required for the appointment of a special public prosecutor. Then I will discuss about Director of Prosecution. Every PP and additional PP, a special PP appointed by state government for conducting cases in High Court is subordinate to the Director of Prosecution, and every public prosecutor, additional public prosecutor, a special and assistant public prosecutors are subordinate to Deputy Director Prosecution. Here I would like to point out that earlier the public prosecutors who is functioning in the High Court of various states were not under the control of the Director of Prosecution. They were appointed by the state government and they used to function under the Chief Public Prosecutor directly. Now this is a new amendment which has been brought recently under Criminal Procedure Code, and as per my knowledge in practice in many of these states this has not been implemented yet. Every PP and additional PP and a special and assistant PP are subordinate to Deputy Director Prosecution. The head of the Directorate of Prosecution is the Director of Prosecution, who is supposed to function under the administrative control of the head of the Home Department in the state. Now the channel of hierarchy has been changed a lot after the recent amendment in Criminal Procedure Code, and in many states it has to be implemented as soon as possible. Now I will focus about the important duties of public prosecutors. His main role is to assist the court regarding bail application under section section 437 and 439 of CRPC, submit the charge sheet to the court of law and to assist the court in initiating proceedings in criminal trial. Then he also assists the court in hearing on the point of taking cognizance of the offence. To do examination in chief of prosecution witnesses and observe them during their cross-examination by defense counsels, to observe examination in chief of defense witnesses and then to cross-examination of defense witnesses, perhaps without any help from the victim's side. To give the legal opinion or advice to SP and DM. This was all about the public prosecutors. You see, the main role of the police is first, the role of police comes first, the role of PP comes second, and parallel also to the role of judicial organization. Judicial organization in India. The Supreme Court of India is headed by the Chief Justice. High Court of State is headed by Chief Justice of High Court, and courts of sessions are headed by district and sessions judges. Judicial magistrates of the first class, and in any metropolitan area, metropolitan magistrates are there. Judicial magistrate of the second class are second to hierarchy, and then executive magistrates who have been given the quasi judicial power. Then appointment of judicial officers at district level, the court of sessions. The sessions judges or district judges are appointed by the High Court, and additional session judges, assistant session judges are appointed by the concerned High Court. The court of judicial magistrates, as many as required in each district, may be appointed by the High Court, and the additional chief judicial magistrate is appointed by the High Court. The court of metropolitan magistrate. The chief metropolitan magistrate and additional chief metropolitan magistrates are appointed by the concerned High Court, and chief metropolitan magistrate is appointed in a metropolitan area having the population of more than 1 million people. A special metropolitan magistrate. High Court may confer power of a special metropolitan magistrate on the request of central or state government to any person who holds or has held any post under government. But the person should possess the qualification and experience in legal affairs. Appointment is done for not more than 1 year. Do I need to speak some in Hindi also? No, I mean if there is any required. Not necessary. Now I would like to talk about the judicial hierarchy. But before I move to the judicial hierarchy, I would like to tell you that as per law, the appointment is done by the High Court, but in judicial appointment, the Public Service Commission of the state is consulted, and that consultation is done, as you know, that the advertisements are coming in the newspaper where who is meeting the eligibility criteria after passing out the law degree may apply, and after filing up the form, the examinations are held like pre and that is pre who qualified in pre. Then they have to appear in the main examination, that is a written examination conducted in every state at the state level, and those who qualify in the written examination up to certain marks or merit depends on the number of seats and the number of candidates appeared. Then they have to face an interview panel of experts where judges and lawyers and academicians are constituting a panel that again varies state wise. And the law questions which are being asked, usually in pre they have objective questions. While you appear for the main examination, the descriptive questions on various aspects of law are being asked. Then the person who is judging the caliber of a person to be appointed as a judicial officer, they usually see the candidate's analytical capacity to judge and to find out the truth on the basis of evidence brought to the judicial officer and to decide the case and to punish or acquit the accused. Now I will talk about judicial hierarchy. Are all assistant sessions judges who have to act under the subordination to the sessions judges in whose court they exercise jurisdiction. Chief Judicial Magistrates and Chief Metropolitan Magistrates have to act under the subordination to Sessions Judge. Every other judicial magistrate is subject to the general control of the Sessions Judge, be subordinate to the Chief Judicial Magistrate. That's called CJM. Every other Metropolitan Magistrate is subject to a general control of the Sessions Judge, and he has to be subordinate to the Chief Metropolitan Magistrate. Now here you see that CGM may be 1 or 2 in one district. Number varies and that depends on the discretion of the court. Then I will talk about the functions of judiciary. The sentences which high courts and sessions court may pass are: a high court may pass any sentence authorized by law. A sessions judge or additional sessions judge may pass any sentence authorized by law, but any sentence of death penalty passed by the sessions judge is subject to the confirmation by the concerned high court. And assistant sessions judges may pass any sentence except a sentence of death or of life imprisonment for life or imprisonment for a term exceeding 10 years. Sentences which a magistrate may pass. The court of a chief judicial magistrate may pass any sentence authorized by law except a sentence of death or of imprisonment for life or of imprisonment for a term exceeding 7 years. The court of a magistrate of the first class may pass sentence of imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 years or a fine not exceeding 10,000 rupees or both. The court of magistrate of the second class may pass a sentence of imprisonment for a term not exceeding 1 year or a fine and not exceeding 5,000 rupees or both. The court of a chief metropolitan magistrate have the powers of the court of a chief judicial magistrate, and that of a metropolitan magistrate the powers of the court of judicial magistrate of the first class. This was about the judicial organization in India. I have tried to give a brief picture about the powers and functioning of the criminal justice system because of the paucity of time, and I would also like to give you some time to ask the questions. Prison and correctional agencies. Types of prison. Before we talk about prison and correctional agencies, I would like to tell you that what is the role of prison and correctional agencies? Why are we talking about prison and correctional agencies? The moment a crime is committed, investigation is conducted, FIR is being lodged and report is being submitted, the role of prosecution and judiciary comes. As soon as the judgment is granted and conviction or acquittal is done, then the role of prison and correctional agencies is being invoked. You will be surprised to know that prison is a place where a person has to be corrected. So that's how the prison and correctional agencies are the part of criminal justice system. And we should not forget that their role is very important because they help in reducing the recidivism rate in the society. So before we talk about the prison organization, I would like to tell you in brief about the types of prisons. The prison, that is central prison, where prisoners punished for more than 5 years of imprisonment are kept. Another is district prison. Persons imprisonment for less than 5 years punished, they are kept in district prison, and district prison is one in each district usually. Then there are sub jail. Sub jail, in each subdivision there is a sub jail, and petty offenders are kept in sub jail. Petty offenders are those offender who are committing a petty offenses. 100 रुपए की चोरी कर ली, साइकिल चुरा के ले गए, इस तरह के petty offenses. खाना चुरा के खा लिया, किसी को 4 थप्पड़ मार दिया. Then there is a concept called open prison. It is a new concept you might be hearing, but there are only 25 open prisons at present in the country, and the main people who are sent to the open prison are, after spending half or 1/4 time the prisoners are sent to the open prison. That varies from one state to another state. And while sending a person in an open prison, the criteria is that the person should be behaving very well in the closed prison. He should be the first time offender. Habitual offenders are not sent to the open prison. Habitual offender are defined under Criminal Procedure Code, and habitual offenders are those offender in IPC, who repeat the crime 3 times in 10 years. Then women prisons. In Tihar, you might have heard the name of Central Prison Tihar, that is located in Delhi, and there is a separate prison for the woman. In many states there is a separate prison for a woman, because there is a provision that men and women prisoners cannot be kept together. Women have to be kept separately in the prison. So that's why women prisons are always separate. And at night, no male person, or during even the daytime, no male person can enter into the woman prison. And the superintendent of woman prison should be a woman. There are much more criteria, and they have got their own right. Now I will talk about the prison organization. That is, first I will discuss about the prison headquarters. The prison headquarters may usually the DG or IG prisons are there, who are usually government servant, maybe IPS, IS or prison services. That depends on state wise, and that is the state's prerogative. Then DIG prisons, additional IG, additional DG, that all may be there. That is again the state's prerogative. Like in UP, IG prison is IS officer. In Delhi, the DG prison, Central Prison Tihar, is the senior police officer. Then law officers, human rights officers, that varies again from state to state. Then I am talking about the prison organization, where the prisoners are actually incarcerated, and that every prison is headed by a superintendent jail. He may be either from a state services or from a jail services. That depends on the state government. They have got their own recruitment rules. Then there is deputy superintendent jail. The superintendent is assisted by deputy superintendent. Then there are jailers. Then deputy jailers, warder. Warder are those people who are actually looking after the prisoners in the cell like a guard. Then main role and responsibilities of a prison organization, of a prison administration is, first of all, to keep prisoners in safe custody. You see, the prison, whosoever may be the prison administrator, is just a custodian, nothing else. He has to keep the prisoners in a custody. That means the safe custody. Like if we mortgage something, then we have to keep that thing in our safe custody. Then correction of offenders. They have to correct the offender. For example, ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि yes, somebody has gone to the jail like a first time offender and coming back as the hardened criminal. That should not be there. Rather, there are a lot of correctional measures taken in various prisons. You must be seeing, for example, in Tihar, there is a big factory going on where prisoners are working, and they are involved in lot of, you see, extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, lot of other activities. So the prisoners, and there are many jails where they have yoga sessions, vipassana session, counselor, because the aim while a person is being incarcerated is to correct him. And we should not forget that a person, even though he is a criminal, he is a human being and might have committed a crime under certain provocation, certain situation, certain influence, but the first time offender. But if a person is a hardened criminal, like you see Ajmal Kasab, then obviously it is difficult to reform them. So but the aim is correction, because unless and until a person is not executed to the death sentence or for life imprisonment, he will come back to the society after spending the required time as prescribed by the court of law in the prison. So the moment person comes back to the society, he has to be restituted back to the society, and when he is restituted back to the society, the aim is that he should not repeat the crime, and for that lot of correctional measures are taken in the prison. Then third objective is to look after the security of prisoners. How the prisoners are kept, what is their security? If a person dies in the jail, that becomes a great problem. That's why prison authorities, the moment a person becomes sick, they don't forget to send him to the hospital. And there are hospitals also in prison. Prison is an institution in itself, because the prison authorities are just only the custodian. और किसी चीज़ को संभाल के रखने के लिए बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ती है. इट इज़ वेरी इजी टू से दिस हैज़ हैपेंड, दैट हैज़ हैपेंड, Accelerator 4 was found in the prison, but it is really hard to maintain them, to correct them, to reform them, to bring back to the society. This was all in short about the criminal justice system in India. Before I proceed further, I would like to inform you that to ensure the criminal justice system in India, we have got a role of fair trial. But before I talk about fair trial, I would like to tell you about the main models of a justice system in India and abroad. At global level, usually two types of models are being followed. One is inquisitorial justice system, another one is adversarial justice system. Inquisitorial justice system is a model which is usually followed in France and in other few countries, and adversarial model of justice is followed in India and other common law countries. Since the India is under the influence of a common law, because India was sometime a British colony, therefore we have followed the adversarial justice system. In inquisitorial justice system, the law enforcement agencies and investigating agencies are separate. The investigating agency's job is to investigate the crime and collect the evidence for and accused, and to bring the fact to the magistrate or to the judge, and the judge's role is very important. He has to play an active role, and he has to see that the trial is conducted properly, and he can bring out the fact himself. While in adversarial justice system, the system is mainly based on the evidence, and conviction or acquittal is being granted on the evidence brought to them by the defense and prosecuting lawyers. Now, in India, as we are following the adversarial justice system, so here the main component of the adversarial justice system are to bring out the evidence, examination, cross-examination, etc., and then the acquittal or punishment is granted on the basis of the evidence. Now the judge can play a very active role, but he has to rely on the evidence brought to him by defense and prosecution. Now I would like to talk to you about the aim of criminal justice system. The main aim of criminal justice system is to prevent and control the crime, and for controlling the crime, the fair trial is very important. The fair hearing has to be done, and the fair trial is the backbone of a criminal justice process. As the investigation should be fair, the trial should also be fair, and for that I would just like to have a brief overview about the international provisions. That is, United Nations Human Rights Committee stated that fair trial is required to ensure proper administration of justice. In India, the fair trial so far has not been defined either in CRPC or anywhere. But it is an inherent right, and Article 21 of the Constitution of India prescribes that no one shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except the provision established by law, and this provision established by law is a due process in US terminology, and the due process is nothing but a fair trial in a criminal case, and in a civil case it is a due procedure of law. In India recently in the year 2004, for the first time in Jahira Habibullah H versus State of Gujarat and others, AIR 2004, Supreme Court, page number 2114, the court stated that denial of fair trial is as much injustice to the accused as is to the victim and the society. Right to a fair trial has been guaranteed under Article 14 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and protected in India in an inherent manner, in employed manner, under various provisions of the law. So after going through the ICCPR, and I would here also like to mention that India has already signed the ICCPR, of course with certain reservations of the certain clauses. I would again, the provision of ICCPR has been accepted under the Protection of Human Rights Act, and they say also that the human rights are those rights which has been enshrined under International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the Constitution of India and the basic human need. Therefore, this convention and covenants are important, and the guiding factor whenever there is guidelines to be sought. After going through the ICCPR and the Constitution of India and the CRPC, here I would like to mention that there are certain basic elements of a fair trial are. First of all, a right of fair hearing has to be ensured, that is right to equal access to the court. That means accused and victim and witnesses, both the parties should have the equal access to the court. Doesn't mean that accused can come to the court, a victim cannot, a victim can come, accused cannot. So they should have equal access. Then right to fair hearing. This fair hearing involves the fair hearing by the court of law. Well, the court of law or a trial court is conducting any trial, they should be fair while hearing any case, and they should pass the impartial judgment. Right to hearing by tribunal, which must be independent, impartial and competent. Tribunal means the employedly, this word carries out the meaning of judicial officers, starting from the apex court, that is Honorable Supreme Court of India, High Court and District Court and Sessions Court and Magistrate Court. Every court should be independent. That's why in India, under the Constitution of India, we have got the doctrine of the separation of powers. The separation of powers has tried to give the independent power to executive, judiciary and administrative wing. So executive is separate, judiciary is separate. So judiciary has got a separate power. That's why the apex court or the Supreme Court of India is the supreme authority, and interference in judicial matter is not permitted by the government or by any executive department. The judge should be impartial, he should be independent, and he should be competent as well. To ensure the competency of the trial court, of the High Court or the Supreme Court or any judicial organization, lot of tests and examinations are being conducted. First of all, the person should be law graduate, then he should qualify the examination conducted by the State Public Service Commission, then he should be appointed, so that the competency is being judged by way of, you see, काइंड ऑफ मैं ये कह सकती हूँ कि उसको कई स्टेजों से पास होने के बाद देयर कॉम्पिटेंसी आर बीइंग जज्ड बाय द एक्सपर्ट एज एट वेरियस स्टेजेस. Then another right to be presumed innocence unless proved guilty. It is a, you see, this principle is based on the doctrine of justice, equity, and good conscience. Well, a person has committed a crime, you suspect that somebody has committed a crime. He may not be a criminal, he may be a criminal. He might have committed a crime, he might not have committed a crime, except if you don't see by your own naked eyes to see somebody committing a crime. Therefore, such a long procedure is being conducted so that the guilt is proved beyond reasonable doubt. And unless and until the guilt is proved beyond reasonable doubt, the person is presumed innocent. And it is presumed that he is innocent, therefore, his rights are not being violated except if he are incarcerated and he is under trial. Then again, right to be informed promptly in a language which one understands. The language should be clear. This is again a provision that in a court of law somebody belongs to a particular state where he doesn't know the meaning of a word. He cannot understand Hindi, he cannot understand English, so he should be explained the cause of acquisition in a language which he understands. Right to get adequate time and facilities for preparation of defense, that's what is in practice. Usually they come and they say we should be given a date so that we can prepare our case. That is again right to be given adequate time and facilities for preparation of defense, very reasonable ground, though sometimes that is being misused and lot of cases are being adjourned. Then right to equal legal aid. The accused and the victim both should be given equal legal aid, and right to early hearing. That means expedient trial is very important. Unreasonable adjournment should not be given. Then right to examine witnesses, that is cross examination, that is a main backbone, because in adversarial justice system a guilt is proved way beyond reasonable doubt only when the prosecution and defense witnesses are cross examined. Then right to get an interpreter, that is not very much in practice in India. Then right not to be compelled to self-incriminate. A special right of juveniles for rehabilitation is also a part of fair trial. Right to judicial review by higher tribunal, which is appeal, review, revision, etc. And right to get compensation for wrong decision. That is also one of the important right, and by way of amendment under Article 357 of Criminal Procedure Code, the compensation provision has been enlarged, and there is a separate section also, which is 357A, where they have talked about the victim compensation fund to be established. So this is all about the criminal justice system and crime. That's what I wanted to discuss with you, and thank you very much to Mr. Amrendra for giving me this opportunity.
So, well, friend, today we try to cover all the major aspects of the criminal justice system in India, and very lucidly Dr. Meenakshi Sinha has explained the role of different organ of the judicial system, like police, prosecutions, and then prison, and other one is investigating agency. So she has managed to cover the, most of the things which are required by all of us to know what is the necessary about the justice system. This has been talked about today, and will also continue the other aspect of the criminal investigation and other criminal judicial systems in the coming lectures. So I thank all of you for watching the today lecture, and on your behalf I thank Dr. Meenakshi Sinha for giving such a wonderful lecture. Thank you very much.